Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the shop. This is going to be the first iteration of 2024. We have the engineering TGM water washable Mecha, and then we have the Novastan 8K. Now in this episode we are going to introduce for the first time the impact testing. But before we start the testing, I want you to meet Miley. Wait a minute. Miley is going to take these test pieces and she is going to smack it like a... This is Eve from the future. I can already tell you that this resin lineup is going to be the resin to beat for 2024. The results of this resin is absolutely amazing. This is not a sponsored product. They have shipped this for free to test, but no money exchange chance, and I can say whatever I want. Watch the complete video, give me a big thumbs up, comment down below. It's very important for the algorithm. It helps me out big time. And if you want some help, the secret code for today is going to be tomatoes. Let's get back to the video. Starting off, we are going to do with the bottle design. The bottle design is terrible. These are very leaky. They are good when they are sealed up and you're going to use it for the first time. But as soon as you are going to shake these bottles, you will see that everything is starting to drip down. And my table is full of uncured resin just from putting the bottle in here. So the sealing design after you shaked and used it for the first time is not great. Then let's talk a bit about the smell. The Novastan regular 8K resin is the worst of the bunch, followed by this one, then this one, and then this one. These three are tolerable in a hot environment. They give off some smell, but it's not that bad. This one, very stinky resin. You definitely need some ventilation. Then printing all these resins, they were all really great except for this one. So this is the washable Mecha resin, and this resin is definitely a lot thicker than all the other resins, and you definitely need some heat. For example, the model failed a few times, and this one also failed a few times, and this was just because this was a way too thick of a resin. The print speeds were way too high, so after adjusting these settings I was able to print everything, but still this is a hard to print resin. So the standard resin is definitely a new version of it, and we can see that there is still a bit of warping, but I think it's not as bad as the previous time. There is warping, but it is not as bad as the first time I tried the Novastan resin. Then the washable Mecha resin, this is close to a perfect resin. If we are looking at warping, this is dead flat, these are dead flat. Now one thing we can see is this thing is starting to curve like a banana. So while the warping on these parts are great, if you are going to print long and thin things, this is going to be problematic. Then we have the TGM resin, and I have to say that there is the smallest hint of warping on the parts, but it is very tolerable, so I think this is still a great result. The stick is also very flat, but we can see that this is starting to go banana, but on the left side. And the last one we have is the engineering resin, and this is also very good on the warping scale. There is the slightest hint of warping, but I have to say that it is very minimal. This little stick is also slightly warped, and we can also see that there is a bit of banana curving going on, but this is also very minimal comparing to all the other resins we have tested. About the engineering resin, this was a very good resin to print with. We have no issues at all. The color is nice. The only thing I have to say is that the white started yellowing even after 2 minutes of curing right there in the Algo curing station. Now the print details are absolutely amazing. Now this color is not the best in showing off details, but the print results are absolutely great. This is a great resin to print with. Then we have the resin block. This is to do the drill and the tapping test, and we can see we have a slight high spot over here. Then we have the nut and bolt test. Now the big question is if we can make it fit. Now the nut and bolt test is an epic fail. I am not able to turn this bolt into this nut, so we could or be overexposed or we lack some details in the threads. Then we have the TGM. This is a very dull and flat looking print. I really enjoy it. This is a very matte texture and it makes me think,
of the Sunlu red wax. So if you're looking for a very flat finish, then this TGM resin is absolutely delivering. I absolutely love the way this little figurine looks. The details are nice and present. So if you are looking for a very flat looking print, this TGM is absolutely amazing. Also on this block we have a high spot on one corner. Nothing too bad, we have seen worse. This is also a great result. Then coming to the nut and bolt test, we are going to try the same thing. And I have to say that this time, if we compare it with the engineering resin, that the details on this thread are looking a bit better. Also on the inside of this nut, the details are looking okay. So let's give it a try. And yep, this one turns on without problem. It's only when we look up close we can see that the TGM resin is showing a much better thread definition than the engineering resin. So I don't think we have an overexposure issue on the engineering, we are just lacking some details. Then we have the water washable Mecha resin. This is also a very cool looking print, although we have more printing issues. You can see right over here we have some banding. This was printed on the Algo Jupiter, which has some Z bracing going on. So this print is going to benefit from more rest times. So this is definitely a lot thicker of a resin. We need heat to print these models, and once you use heat and plenty of rest time, you are able to print all of this. So this was printed after this thing. We can see that we are not able to push the speeds of all the other resins. We need a lot more heat and rest times. Once we adjusted our settings, we can see that this testing block for the trail and tap test is one of the most perfect blocks we have printed so far. There is only a very little high spot right over here, but I think that this is by far one of the best results we ever had, except for I think it was the Sunlu ABS. So this is very good. Just make sure that you nail the settings and then you get sweet prints just like this. The nut and bolt tests, we can see that the thread definition seems to be okay. Also on the inside it is looking okay, so let's give it a try. We are definitely able to turn it on. It's a bit tight, so I think we are ever so slightly overexposed, but that's okay. We have enough definition to see that the threads are working. Then we have the Novastan 8K. This is their updated version of their regular resin, and we can see that the details are absolutely mind-blowing. This also has a bit of a dull finish, so this is going to be very cool just to put it on your desk. Then the resin block, we also have a high spot right over here, but this is very minimal. I think this is still a great result. Then we are at the nut and bolt test of the Novastan 8K, and I have to say that the threads are looking a bit dulled out comparing to the TGM, so we have a little less defined threads on this. Looking at the inside, we can see that the threads are looking fine in this thing, but I'm afraid looking at these threads, this is going to be a tough one. It's turning on, but it is very difficult to get it on. It is very tight. It started off great and it's getting very tight, so I think we are lacking some definition on the threads. So far, all these resins are looking very promising. We lack a little bit of details on the Novastan and the engineering, but the warping is very minimal on all of these, and now it's time to do the testing. You have met Miley. Let's start with the impact testing. This was the first test piece, and we can see that Miley took her first victim. Now if we look at the results, they are not that amazing. We are between 0 and 5% of impact resistance. We have a few more, so I'm going to repeat the testing. Now the test pieces are very consistent. We had our little fun. Now it's time to fast forward. Next up are going to be the TGM test pieces. This was the last one. We can see the results are very consistent. We are at about 2.5%, so we have the same impact resistance as the engineering resin. Next up we have the washable Mecha resin. The Mecha resin seems to be doing a better job, and it is averaging around 10% of impact resistance. And the performance of the Novastan 8K seems to be on par with the rest, with about 3% of impact resistance. The push results are quite amazing, with the engineering taking the first place with a nice amount of elongation, which is a lot more different than other resins we have seen. Most of the time the very good resins tend to be brittle. Then the TGM is close behind the engineering, doing not that bad in the push test, but we can see that there's a lot less of elongation, making the resin snap easier, so it looks to be more brittle. Then we have the Mecha resin. The Mecha resin has a nice amount of elongation. It doesn't break. All the samples we have tested don't break when putting the push test on it, which makes it look a lot like the Sunlu toughness, so I think we can compare the Mecha a lot with the toughness. We have a nice amount of elongation, the same as the toughness, but at the same time being stronger than the toughness. The Novastan 8K performed really great at the third place, but we can definitely see that there is not a lot of elongation and it snaps really easy. At the pull test we can see the engineering performing absolutely amazing, taking the top spot of the tier list, and we can see that at 551 Newton meters the engineering resin performed the best of all the resins we have tested so far. The Nova TGM performed in the middle of the pack with about 360 Newton meters of force, making it close behind the Conjure Tough and some other standard-ish resins. Now the Mecha is very interesting. We can see that the Mecha is performing a bit better than the toughness, confirming what we are thinking, that the Mecha is a tough-like resin, but performing a lot better than the toughness. The Novastan 8K did really good being a standard-ish resin, performing at 376 Newton meters of force, putting it close to the Yamaha Standard Plus resin. For the drill test we are using a 5mm to drill the first hole and a 6.8 to drill the second hole. Using these two drill bits we can definitely see if a resin is going to be brittle or not. Starting with the engineering. The engineering drilled okay. We can see in the second drill bit that it is not brittle, and the performance is also very good at 28 Newton meters of torque. We don't have a major explosion and everything sticks together, so this is a really strong resin. Drilling the TGM resin we can definitely see at the second drill it is a lot more brittle than the engineering resin, but still it performed absolutely great at 34 Newton meters of torque before exploding. And also in the same way the cracking sounded more like a paper rip and the resin stayed together even though it busted open. The Mecha resin, feeling like a Sunlu toughness, is going to drill absolutely great. We can see long strands of resin coming out of the drill bit. The second drill bit already shows that this is not a brittle resin at all. So I'm not expecting any explosions or anything. The thing that is going to happen is that we are going to strip the thread, and right after the 23 Newton meters of torque we can see that the threads got destroyed at 25 Newton meters of torque. Looking at the block we can see we have no major blowouts, so this is a pretty soft resin to drill in. Absolutely amazing to do some engineering work on it. Now we are at the Novastan 8K and we can definitely see at the second drill bit this is a very brittle resin, but still we got 30 Newton meters of torque and we have an explosive reaction at 30 Newton meters, making it feel a bit like all the other resins because this literally exploded in two pieces. Then we have the stiffness test. The stiffness test is going to give you an idea what resin is going to do when adding a load on it. And putting a load on this resin we can see this is definitely a more stiff resin than all the other ones. We have only a drop of 5 centimeters at the endpoint, so this is a pretty stiff resin. The TGM is also a pretty stiff resin. We can see that it is even stiffer than the engineering, giving it the second place of the stiffest resins we have tested so far. Then we have the Mecha resin. This is a tough-like resin and it is a bit like the Sunlu, so this resin is absolutely going to be a lot more flexible. We can see at the endpoint we have about 10 centimeters of sagging. The Nova 8K is a standard-ish resin and we can see it in the results. This is the stiffest resin we have tested so far, making it also very brittle. We have done all the testing. We have seen that this resin performed really great. The impact testing is going to be very soon to make a good conclusion on how these resins performed, but it is safe to say that the Mecha resin has absolutely done very well, and the impact testing rejecting about 10% of impact, while all the other ones were around the 3% mark. Then the warping, we could see that all these resins performed really great. Only the Nova 8K was a bit worse than all the rest. The Mecha was dead flat, the other ones were very minimal, and then the 8K was fine. It was a little bit, it's fine. Comparing to other resins we have tested, this one is not a problem. And then the last thing is looking at the pricing of this new Nova3D lineup. And I have to say, I'm a bit disappointed. None of these resins are under the $30 mark. I am not sure if they do a lot of sales or anything on these resins. So these are more on the expensive side. And I would like to see some of these getting a bit dropped, especially the 8K. The 8K is $30 for a liter. I think it would be better if it's close to the $25 mark. Then the Mecha is about the same as the Sunlu toughness and properties. We have seen that it is a bit better performing in all the testing that we have done. The Sunlu toughness is going for about $36 at the moment we are filming this video, and the Nova Mecha right now on the site is for about $35. So it is $1 cheaper than the Sunlu toughness. In my opinion, it is worth buying this resin. It is cheaper than the Sunlu. It's a little bit cheaper, but this is very good if you are going to print miniatures, as long as you take in account that you will have to print this resin slower. Then we have the Nova TGM. We have definitely seen that this is an absolutely amazing color, and the resin properties of the TGM are fine. We have low warping, we have good performance on the resin. So this is definitely an upper tier standard-ish resin in my opinion, but the pricing is also not that great. We are seeing that this is going on sale for $36. This is very expensive resin, and we think we have better resins for that price range. We still have the Sunlu ABS like for $29, and this is going to beat everything that is on the table right now just in pricing alone. And then we have the Nova Engineering, and this is absolutely the best resin I have tested so far. So this is combining everything you want. We have good elongation before breaking. We have very strong parts coming out of this resin. We have very low warping. This is absolutely the best ABS engineering, whatever you want to call it, resin we have tested so far. But the pricing also not that great. The engineering resin from Nova is going for about $37 for a liter. So this is very expensive resin, like all the rest. Not good priced. It is a good resin to print with, and if you are looking for the absolute best resin I can recommend to you right now, it is going to be the Nova3D Engineering. The only thing I hope to see in the future is that all these resins will drop down below the $30 mark. Yeah, I have no clue why this is more expensive. There's probably some chemists watching right now that are saying it's because. Please leave a comment down below. I would love to know why these resins are so expensive. Then, if we look at the other resins, we could definitely see that these resins all got a bit cheaper in the past. Now all these resins on the list got more expensive, except for the Anycubic Eco. It finally dropped in price for I think about $2. It is still a shit resin, and you should still not buy that resin. Now the Siraya Tenacious, still top dog. Most expensive resin on the list, and funny enough, the Siraya Blue Tough went up in price, and not with a little bit. I think it was previously in the $35 range, and now it is bumped up to $60. So Siraya Tech, I have no clue what you guys are doing. This stuff is so expensive, and I think if you are just a regular Joe, just like me, you should not buy the Siraya Tech resins. These Nova resins, top dogs for 2024, and we have only started, so I am really interested to see what we are going to test in the future. Now, one thing I want to finish off with this video is we are going to snap these pieces. Normally I just throw them away. So this is the piece from the Nova 8K, and now we will see live when it will break. Very violent, and the violent reaction we get is a perfect example of a brittle resin. Brittle resin will shatter super violently, and we can see it in the bend test. There were pieces flying everywhere. I think even, yeah, there are The pieces went everywhere. Now we have the Mecha. I don't expect the Mecha to be super violent because we have seen in all the testing that the Mecha has a good elongation before breaking. It is a softer resin, so I don't expect violent breaks. Now let's do the test. Well, we did snap it, but it was only at the last part, and this was an extreme bend, I think, except for the tenacious. This was a really, really good result. If you want to print miniatures, this is absolutely the resin to get. Only the pricing, guys, come on. Then we have the TGM. The TGM feels to me to be an upper tier standard-ish resins. We don't have the really good elongation we get on the engineering and especially on the Mecha. So this is a bit lower tier, but we still have very good strength in all the other properties. So we are going to see what kind of a reaction we are going to get out of the TGM. So also a very violent explosion, just like I saw during the testing. This is also a fairly brittle resin, and I have seen pieces fly everywhere. So I guess when I do my shop renovation, I will find them eventually. Then we have the engineering. We have a bit more elongation on this one on the testing. So I hope we can see the same results right now. And this is the perfect example of what I mean with elongation. This is absolutely fine. It is very strong. I have to do a lot of effort to do this. Now let's try to break it. Okay, very violent, but we got a lot more elongation. In my opinion, if you would ask me what the resin to pick is, the engineering best resin we have tested so far. This is definitely, for my roundup of 2024, going to be in my S tier list. But Nova, if you are listening, do something on the pricing. All right, that is going to be it. I had a lot of fun doing this first roundup of this, probably one of the best resins we are going to test in the near future. I think the competition will have his hands full to beat this resin. The pricing war, I hope it is coming soon. I have seen the market shift up. I don't like it at all, but yeah. We can only hope that Nova is listening and is going to do something about the pricing. If you are still watching, thank you so much for following along. There will be a lot more resins that we are going to test. We are also going to dive into the filament, but this is going to take a while before we are going to get started because I want to renovate this complete corner. It is absolutely trashed and I can no longer work in my shop. Let me show you around, guys. All right, this is very, very close. So this is normally the table where I do all my woodworking. And as you can see, this table is absolutely jam-packed with crap on it. We have a printer on it. We have some spools I cannot use anymore. We have new stuff to test. We have a lot more to come, as you can see. And then the prototyping that I am doing. You can see this is going to be the Mega Smoother. We are very close to a final example. I have purchased some plating to cover everything up because we are losing a lot of IPA when we are trying to smooth. So I hope the plexi is going to help with sealing the chamber. And of course we also have a bunch of crap right over there. We have crap all over the workplaces, and behind me my little storage space where we have some private stuff and my regular work stuff. It is also trashed. We have wood laying all over the ground. So I'm thinking about doing some kind of a vlog where we are going to tear everything out in this corner, and I want all the printing stuff that you have seen right now to be in this corner. So I want all my printers right over there. I want my cleaning solutions over there. So this thing right up top is my drying chamber and my filament spool thingy, and I want to expand this over the complete wall. So all the filaments that you have seen just lying around, I want them gone, and I want them all in this corner together with all the printing solutions we have right now. So all these tables can stay clear, that if I'm doing some projects on my private time, some things that YouTube don't care that I make, especially the woodworking, sadly enough, yeah, that I can continue those behind the camera.
If you are interested in seeing that stuff, please comment down below. I have a second channel that I'm not using right now, and maybe I'm going to try and put some stuff on that, especially the woodworking kind, because I like to do some woodworking, and really sad that the woodworking stuff on my channel is just getting bombed the minute I post it, because I am deemed to be a 3D printing channel right now. Thank you, YouTube. Alright, this is going to be it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Leave a comment down below with the secret code and let me know what you think about all of these resins. That's gonna be it. Thank you for watching, and guys, I see you in the next one.